Now is a time of unity, for the left and the right can finally have something to come together about. Henry Kissinger is dead at 100 years old. Breaking news, one of the worst people to walk the face of the earth has now been excommunicated into the shadow realm, and with it, hopefully into the deepest layers of where the Grim Reaper can drag him. What I find so incredibly fascinating about all of this is the fact of how the establishment is reporting on this. Because, of course, they're talking about the nobility of how great Henry Kissinger was as a statesman and how impactful he was throughout U.S. foreign policy here and abroad. Well, that's absolutely true. Henry Kissinger was absolutely one of the most influential people in all of U.S. foreign policy, and with it, he has the blood of innocent millions on his hands. He is not someone who can be looked at as this bastion of nobility because he is nothing more than a tyrant and a war criminal. There are very few people throughout all of U.S. foreign policy who have had as much influence and sway as motherfucking Henry Kissinger. This dude undoubtedly had his hands in effectively almost every single bottom-up or top-down regime change that the U.S. has been involved in. Whether it was establishing coups d'etats or overthrowing and toppling governments, I guarantee you this man was a major part of it. And with it, we can see that someone who is responsible for the suffering of so many no longer walking this earth is absolutely something that we can celebrate. Breaking. Henry Kissinger is dead at the age of 100. Former United States Secretary of State Henry Kissinger died on Wednesday at his home in Connecticut at the age of 100, Kissinger Associates Incorporated said in a statement. Well, isn't that just something? I'm going to preface this right now and say if you're someone who does not want to see someone like Henry Kissinger, let's say, be drugged through the mud, well, this just isn't the video for you. You might as well just click off now. We go ahead and move on, and here we have this picture that I made immediately. This is the first thing that came to mind when Henry Kissinger died. I was like, oh, he's going to be waiting outside the gates of hell with Jeffrey Epstein, John McCain, and Dianne Feinstein. Of course, it's so obvious. So here we have it. And then we see from Joshua Smith, what a legacy. And what a legacy indeed. If these are the things that go viral right after you die, well, I'd have to argue that you weren't that great of a person. He's dead. It finally happened. Rest in piss, bozo. R.I.P. Bozo indeed. And here we see the same picture from the Classical Liberal Caucus. What does this mean? And we all know what it means. It means Henry Kissinger's kissing dirt. And now we see here from the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. Oh, I love this Twitter account. About fucking time. And what we see is that it's the Grim Reaper playing the claw machine of life, and he finally got Kissinger. Now let's just see if he can go ahead and get John McCain. Now what we see here from Anarcho-Christian, this is a quote from Henry Kissinger, one of the most evil men to walk the face of the earth. Military men are just dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns in foreign policy. Henry Kissinger. The man who had his hands in effectively every single foreign policy conflict abroad that the United States was involved in. Someone who's responsible for the outright destruction of places like Cambodia, dropping over 2 million bombs. What do we see? We see that he is sitting there saying military men are just dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns in foreign policy. He will gladly sacrifice you, your sons and daughters, every single person you know and love as nothing more than pawns on the chessboard of war. And why is that? Because he doesn't see you as anything more than expendable. Because you're nothing more than dumb rubes from the middle of the country. And that's why we can expend you. Because realistically, you don't matter. And with it, you're nothing more than our tax chattel and our fighting force. That is the mindset of people like Henry Kissinger. And with that, we crab dance because he is now fucking dead. Now what do we see here? 400 million worth at his time of death and a Zionist Israel supporter. If Henry Kissinger goes to heaven, then I'd rather go to hell. Henry Kissinger's crimes. And I can guarantee you, this dude will reach nowhere near the pearly gates. 1. Cambodia bombing, 500,000 killed. 2. East Timor invasion support, 200,000 deaths. 3. Chile government overthrow, US-backed Pinochet's dictatorship. 4. Bangladesh killings, 3 million dead. 5. Argentina's dirty war, 30,000 killed and 30,000 disappeared. 6. The Laos bombing, 200,000 dead. 7. The Vietnam War toll, 2.5 to 3 million people dead. And that's just the recorded count. Now, how many people is it that we lost because of the decay from many of these societies? How many children died because they didn't have proper sustainability when it came to the factors of their parents being able to take care of them, because so many of the processes that their parents would have used to naturally do so were destroyed through the factors of war because people like Henry Kissinger funded it. Granted, the thing that we must cover and that we must be grateful for, and I've said it once already, is that Henry Kissinger is dead. This man no longer has the ability to suck oxygen and steal it away from children, many of which he has gladly sat there and ruled over the death of, as he has pushed the foreign policy that has consistently caused the death of innocents over and over and over again. And just to cap this off for Twitter, we're going to be jumping into this tweet from Anthony Bourdain, the absolute legend. He says, "Frequently I've come to regret things I've said. This from 2001 is not one of those times." And what a quote it is. "Once you've been to Cambodia, you'll never stop wanting to beat Henry Kissinger to death with your bare hands. You will never again be able to open a newspaper and read about the treacherous, perverting, murderous scumbag sitting down for a nice chat with Charlie Rose or attending some black tie affair for a new glossy magazine without choking. Witness what Henry did in Cambodia, the fruits of his genius for statesmanship, and you will never understand why he's not sitting in the dock at The Hague next to Milosevic." Let's go ahead and jump into these articles. Realistically, when I talk about people like Henry Kissinger, it gets very Fed posty, so I have to re-record a lot of times. So I'm going to go ahead and end it there because I know exactly how this is going to go, and I'm just going to snowball. So let's jump into it. Satan's right-hand minion, Henry Kissinger, who shaped world affairs under two presidents, dies at 100. The diplomat exercised an unparalleled control over U.S. international affairs and policymaking. He was also the target of relentless critics who deemed him unprincipled and immoral. Well, that is because Henry Kissinger was both unprincipled and immoral. Point blank, there is no other way to put it. If you would actively say the things that you've said about U.S. soldiers, if you would advocate for the policies that would lead to the death of millions, and then upon knowing the fact that it's leading to so much suffering, then advocate for more of it and double down, well, yes, you are an unprincipled and amoral son of a bitch. Now what do? We go on and we see Henry Kissinger, the towering American diplomat, dies at age 100. Always pay attention to how the journalist class will always curry favor for the worst of the elite. What do we see here? The key points, not those who he cost the lives of, not the destruction of the nations which he heralded over the foreign policy of. These are the key points. Henry Kissinger was a Harvard professor that became the U.S. archetypical diplomat, master political manipulator and pop culture icon, loved by admirers and loathed by detractors. As President Richard Nixon's top foreign policy aide, Kissinger negotiated America's exit from the disastrous Vietnam War, winning a Nobel Peace Prize, undeservedly so. He also masterminded the détente policy that thawed the Cold War with the Soviet Union and helped break down the diplomatic Great Wall that surrounded communist China for 2.5 decades. So they don't talk about the fact of how he's responsible for any of these things. No, it's just about the fact of, don't you understand the nobility of this man that cost the lives of millions? His hands are stained with the blood of millions, and you see the journalist class just completely obfuscating in it, not paying any attention to it. It reminds me of Walter Duranty during the times of the Soviet Union, who I believe he was the New York Times man in Moscow. And what he did was consistently report back to the United States about what was happening in the Soviet Union. And what he did was lie. He lied about the nature of the suffering of the people within the Soviet Union. And what did he say? One of the quotes that rings true in my mind every time I think about the journalist class and how much of the nature of these people are nothing more than snakes at their core. Well, Walter Duranty said, "There is no starvation in the Soviet Union. The Russians are simply tightening their belts." Well, if you're a child and you're having to tighten your belt, why are you having to do so? It's because you don't have food and you're starving. And the fact that people like Walter Duranty, the journalist class, which still sit in power today to run and curry favor for the elites, would sit there and say things like that just show the nature of the depravity that these people fucking live in. They look down upon you and they will gladly send you and your loved ones to go die in these conflicts and then write about the nobility of the people who signed off on the foreign policy. Let's go ahead and jump into this article from CNN. What do we have now? Henry Kissinger, a dominating and polarizing force in U.S. foreign policy, dies at age 100. And well, a dominating and polarizing force is absolutely true. He was most certainly incredibly influential, and with it, we can also see that U.S. foreign policy was one of the most destructive forces over the past 70 years, and Henry Kissinger, as I've already stated, being unbelievably influential. Let's go ahead and play this clip from CNN, and then we will get into this article from the Rolling Stone.
I know all of you will want to hear from the new Secretary of State.
Henry Kissinger never really needed an introduction on the world stage again. Kissinger, the most famous statesman of the last half of the 20th century. Celebrated and controversial.
I'm not going to make any sense.
As Richard Nixon's national security advisor and Secretary of State, the diplomat wielded enormous power and influence. So trusted that it was Kissinger who went to China on a secret mission to explore a historic opening of U.S. relations with Communist China.
Whoever went would be alone in Beijing with no communication. And therefore, if he didn't know Nixon's mind, he might do foolish things.
Initially, there were fears a U.S.-China ping-pong exchange match would affect the high-stakes political gambit.
Every once in a while, something happens in diplomacy which transcends the drafting of cables.
Vietnam. Casualties mounted as the Vietnamese gained territory. Nixon and an undiplomatic Kissinger thought more bombing of the North would help.
I would then recommend that you start bombing the bejesus out of them within 48 hours.
Kissinger approved secret bombings of North Vietnamese units in Cambodia without congressional approval. He would say sometimes statesmen have to choose among evils, moral compromises in messy conflicts. Kissinger and his Vietnamese counterpart, Le Duc Tho, were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for their role in negotiating a ceasefire.
I have to say, I have never dealt with a group of people as treacherous as the North Vietnamese leadership.
Kissinger insisted trouble on the home front hurt chances to succeed in Vietnam.
We lost the war because we were divided, and also because we were too uncertain about what we wanted.
Kissinger's support for a coup in Chile and pro-U.S. military strongmen in other parts of the world drew criticism.
Arrest Henry Kissinger for war crimes!
Kissinger's legacy would be contested decades later when he testified in Congress at the age of 91. Kissinger grew up in Germany with war clouds swirling. His family fled when he was 15.
About half of the people I went to school with, and about 13 members of my own family, died in concentration camps.
A Jewish Secretary of State who would later listen to his president criticize American Jewish leaders.
It's about goddamn time that the Jew in America realized he's an American first and a Jew second. Well, I couldn't agree more.
I only heard anti-Semitic comments when some Jewish group would attack him for something he had done.
In the Middle East, Kissinger performed what came to be known as shuttle diplomacy to separate Israeli and Arab forces, setting the stage for future peace accords. When Nixon resigned as president, Kissinger stayed on as Gerald Ford's Secretary of State, his opinion still widely sought after by governments and businesses after leaving public office.
You want to leave your country better off than you found it. And there's nothing in private life you can do that's as interesting and as fulfilling.
There was one job Kissinger said he never got to do in his life, a sports announcer.
Derek who?
However, the globe-trotting diplomat did star in some of history's biggest games.
For all of the hatred I have in my heart for people like Henry Kissinger, it doesn't extend to the fact of being happy to see his family suffer. That's genuinely heartbreaking. The fact is, people who don't understand Henry Kissinger's family, many of them were exterminated in the Holocaust. And with it, they fled and he came to America years later. And the thing that people don't get is the fact that why the irony of Henry Kissinger being the person who sought over American foreign policy is so heartbreakingly fucking sad. Because the nature of seeing your family be exterminated by a superstate gone awry, using the factors of foreign policy to persecute every single person abroad within the territories they desire to control. It's just a fucking sad bit of irony, the fact that Henry Kissinger became who he became because of the nature of what he ended up pushing in the American foreign policy establishment when you think of how his family was persecuted. It's really sad. Anyways, on to this article from Rolling Stone. Good riddance. What a banger way to start this article. Henry Kissinger, war criminal beloved by America's ruling class, finally dies. The infamy of Nixon's foreign policy architect sits eternally beside that of history's worst mass murderers. A deep shame attaches to the country that celebrates him. And I'm going to have to agree on that. Henry Kissinger died on Wednesday at his home in Connecticut. His consulting firm said in a statement, "Notorious war criminal was 100 years old. Measuring purely by confirmed kills, the worst mass murder ever executed by the United States was the white supremacist terrorist Timothy McVeigh. We do not actually even know if he was actually a white supremacist terrorist. The narrative surrounding what happened with the OKC bombing, let's just say, does not make sense at best. And with it, if you're curious about this and you want to go see some deep dives, go check out OKC Booth or go check out Jose Galison. They have a fantastic series where they talk about this and break it down in mass. I will leave Jose linked in the description down below. Cannot recommend him enough. Great follow on Twitter as well. On April 19, 1995, McVeigh detonated a massive bomb at the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, killing 168 people, including 19 children. The government killed McVeigh by lethal injection in June 2001. McVeigh, who was in his own psychotic way, thought he was saving America, never remotely killed on the scale Kissinger, the most revered American grand strategist of the second half of the 20th century, had done. The Yale University historian Greg Grandin, author of the biography of Kissinger's Shadow, estimated that Kissinger's actions from 1969 to 1976, a period of 8 brief years when Kissinger made Richard Nixon and then Gerald Ford's foreign policy as National Security Advisor and Security of the State, meant the end of between 3 and 4 million people's lives. That includes crimes of commission, he explained, as in Cambodia and Chile, and omission, like greenlighting Indonesia's bloodshed in East Timor, Pakistan's bloodshed in Bangladesh, and the inauguration of an American tradition of using and then abandoning the Kurds. And what had happened with the Kurds is genuinely tragic. The Americans, much like we always do with foreign policy, waved a flag of claiming that we cared so much about these people. Oh no, Saddam's going to gas the Kurds. And then after all of this fomenting of how we acted like we cared so much about these people, what happened? We abandoned them and then they were persecuted. The Cubans say there is no evil that lasts 100 years, and Kissinger is making a run to prove them wrong. Damn, what a quote. Grandin told Rolling Stone not long before Kissinger died. There is no doubt he'll be hailed as a geopolitical grand strategist, even though he bungled most crises leading to escalation. He'll get credit for opening China. That was de Gaulle's original idea and initiative. He'll be praised for détente, and that was a success. But he undermined his own legacy by aligning with the neocons. And of course, he'll get off scot-free from Watergate, even though his obsession with Daniel Ellsberg really drove the crime. Not once in the half-century that followed Kissinger's departure from power did the millions of people in the United States killed matter for his reputation, except to confirm a ruthlessness that pundits occasionally find thrilling. America, like every empire, champions its state murderers. And I'm going to repeat that last part before I end this. Not once in the half-century that followed Kissinger's departure from power did the millions the United States killed matter for his reputation, except to confirm a ruthlessness that pundits occasionally find thrilling. America, like every empire, champions its state murderers. And that's absolutely true. They will gladly sit there and act like these people are the nobility of the class, and as Rothbard says, they are nothing more than the established nobility held up by the intellectual class and intertwined with the state, and with it, we can see that that is how these people hold power. Now, this article is fantastic. If you'd like to go ahead and get into it, it will be in the link in the description down below so you can jump into it after I finish. What do we have here? Reviewing one of Kissinger's litany of books, Hillary Clinton in 2014 said Kissinger, a friend whose counsel she relied on as Secretary of State, possessed a conviction that we and President Obama share, a belief in the indispensability of continued American leadership in service of a just and liberal order. Kissinger told USA Today within days that Clinton, presumed then to be a president in waiting, ran the State Department in the most effective way that I've ever seen. The same story noticed a photograph autographed by Obama thanking Kissinger for his continued leadership. It's always valuable to hear the reverent tones with which American elites speak of their monsters. When the Kissingers of the world pass, their humanity, their purpose, their sacrifices are foremost in the mind of the respectable. American elites recoiled in disgust when Iranians in great numbers took to the streets to honor one of the monsters, Qasem Soleimani, after the U.S. drone strike that executed the Iranian external security chief in January of 2020. Soleimani, whom the United States declared to be a terrorist and killed as such, killed far more people than Timothy McVeigh. But even if we attribute to him all of the deaths in the Syrian civil war, never in Soleimani's wildest dreams could he have killed as many people as Henry Kissinger. I'm going to go ahead and end it there. Thank you for watching if you got this far. Never forget that the establishment class will always lionize bloodthirsty monsters and act like they are the most noble of people. Meanwhile, they will gladly send you and everyone you love to go die in these conflicts. And then, as Henry Kissinger said, do so because they see you as nothing more than stupid pawns to die for the chessboard. Thank you for watching. Thumbs up if you liked it. Thumbs down if you didn't. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Henry Kissinger is dead. Everyone celebrate. Stay lovely. Stay great. Peace out.